Hey, what's up, Blue Devils? My name's Karina Bender-Abrams, and I am a physical therapist and strength coach, also assistant varsity baseball coach. And I've teamed up with Nick Pohl, who is another strength coach and sports nutritionist, to give you guys some guidelines on taking care of your most important piece of sports equipment. As an athlete, you can think back a couple years to whatever gear you were using in your sport, your cleats, your stick, your glove, all a little different than what you're using today. And what you're using in a couple years will be completely different. Your body, your one human body, is the only thing that you have always and will always have. Let's learn how to take good care of it so it can perform at a high level for you for a long time. Our bodies are pretty simple when we break it down this way. We are made up of mobile segments and stable segments. And they're built in an alternating pattern. So there's an alternating pattern of stable segments connected by mobile joints. And if the alternating pattern gets messed up, then pain and injury and decreased performance can occur. So you can think about it this way. Stable joints, stable segments like to move in one plane of motion. They move, but they only like to move in one direction. Mobile joints or areas move in all kinds of different directions. They can go forward and backward and sideways and twist. If a stable segment is asked to bend in a way that it doesn't want to, that's when injuries happen. So you can think about, look at the shoulder. So the shoulder is a mobile joint. On purpose, it is built to be flexible in a lot of directions. It can go forward and backward, and it can go in and out, and it can rotate so that your arm can get into any position you need it to be in. However, if the elbow is asked to do something other than just bend and straighten, then injuries happen. Then it's a sprain or something tears. So all the joints can move in multiple directions, but with our stable ones, we really don't want you to do that. So how do we make sure that our pattern stays stable, that our pattern stays the way it's designed to be, with the stable areas being stable and supporting us and transferring energy well, and the mobile areas being flexible and resilient and efficient? We got to check in with the system once in a while and see how we're moving. So we're going to go through a series of screens that you can do with yourself. You can kind of just feel how you do with these movements, or you could set a video up and take a little video of yourself doing this. You can sort of get a checkpoint of where you're starting. These things are pretty simple, and if you're able to do these on a regular basis, you can get an idea of how well you're moving and then also how you're responding to your training. So if there's an area that feels tight or sore, you can identify it with this, or if there's a balance issue, you'll be able to see that, and then maybe help tailor your training a little bit. This helps us identify problems before they become injuries. First, we're going to take a look at the neck. So you take your chin down, and you should be able to touch your chin towards your chest without too much strain or difficulty, and you're still breathing. Then you look up toward the ceiling, and you see if you can get your face about horizontal. So if the line that's kind of between your forehead and your chin is close to the horizontal line, you're doing pretty well. Then when you look to either side, you're going to see if you can bring your chin toward your collarbone and see if it's as easy to go to one side as it is to go to the other side. Then we'll check your shoulders. You'll bring your arm kind of up and behind your head, try to touch your other shoulder blade, and then also bring your arm kind of behind your back to try to touch your other shoulder blade that way. A lot of you guys that are throwers or overhead athletes in general this will feel different side to side. It'll be easier on one side. It might feel a little tight, but the range of motion should be pretty good on both sides. It should feel fairly easy to reach these landmarks. So what you're trying to, these are combined motions, which is how we use our arms in real life. You're reaching your arm backward, rotating it inward, and bending your elbow to get your shoulder blade to touch your shoulder blade with that image on the left. And then in order to get your arm behind your head, you have to bring it out to the side and rotate it the other direction and bend your elbow to touch your shoulder blade back there. So just a combined motion assessment for shoulder mobility should be the same on both sides. And then we're going to look globally at how your spine works. So if you're standing with your feet pretty close together and your knees straight, round down, see how far you can go. You can touch your toes or you can't. There shouldn't be any pain associated with any of this stuff. So if there is pain with this, other than just feeling a little tight when you do something for the first time that you haven't done in a while, then that's time to reach out to a medical professional and see what's going on there. So again, you can address a problem before it becomes a full-blown injury. So when you're bending forward, you should be able to touch your toes pretty smoothly, pretty easily. When you bend backward, your pelvis, your hips should shift forward while your upper body rotates back or bends back to do this extension pattern in the middle. And then this turning pattern is really easy to assess on yourself. If you stand with your back to a mirror and your feet are together and you turn as far as you can, everything except your feet, turn everything you can as far as you can to the right, you should be able to see your left shoulder coming across the side like that. And then if you turn the same, then you do the same to the other side, and it should feel pretty even side to side. You should be able to move smoothly in both directions there. Then we use balance as our measure of global stability. So first of all, can you stand on one foot? If you can do it pretty easily for 10 seconds with tall posture without losing any of your height while you're balancing, then you try it with your eyes closed. Closing your eyes will automatically make balancing much harder. Without vision, balance is much more difficult. What we're doing is testing all the other systems you have, your position sense, to see if you can compensate for the lack of vision. I know you play your sport with your eyes open, but when we're testing stability and kind of your global control in your posture, it's another way that we can challenge it. So it's normal for you guys if you can hold both sides longer than 10 seconds with your eyes closed. Please be careful if you're testing this on your own. Then we're going to do kind of a weird squat as our last assessment. So this squat, your feet are shoulder width apart. I usually tell people put your big toes underneath your armpits. Your toes are going to face forward. And the reason for that is we're looking for ankle mobility in this as part of this test. But I also want you to be able to do it today and then again in a week and make sure you're testing yourself on the same thing. So if your toes are out a little bit, you'll never know exactly the position unless you put them straight ahead. So toes pointing straight ahead like the number 11. And then you sit down in your squat as far as you can without your heels coming up. So when you start this test, your arms are out in front of your body, reaching forward. You come down into the squat as far as you can without your heels coming up, and then you see if you can bring your arms down without losing your balance. Very common to feel like you're going to fall over backward when you do this, but you're already pretty close to the floor, so it's okay. Again, you don't do something that hurts. You don't push past pain, but you see how deep you can get into this squat. After many years of screening high school athletes, this is kind of a general report card, this trend that we see. So these are the areas that most of us struggle with. Ankle and hip mobility, meaning like flexibility and range of motion, and also the flexibility, mobility in the upper back are the areas that tend to be tight on a lot of us. And then we tend to lack stability in our shoulder blades and in our lower back and what a lot of people refer to as the core, which is not a phrase that I really am a huge fan of because a lot of folks are referring to abdominal muscles, which is part of it, but there's a ton of other stuff that goes on around the lower back, including glutes and obliques that are important to this too. So this is the report card that we tend to see. And if you guys got a report card like this, you would say, okay, well, no, I need to spend some time on these grades and improve this. I'm going to study a lot on this stuff. So come up with a study plan for all of this. And so what I'm going to try to do here is make my camera a little bigger so you can see me a little better. And we're going to go through our study plan. So we're going to start with an exercise for mobility of the hip and the ankle. So if I'm kneeling on one side and my other side is in front, this is called half kneeling. So this is a stretch that we're going to do for the back hip and the front ankle. So we're going to tuck the tail down and just lean forward, stretching here, and then we come back. If we're doing this as part of a pregame or a warm-up for a practice or a warm-up for a workout in general, we do dynamic stretching like this. You come into the stretch position a second or two, and then you come right back. You even get a little hamstring in there if you want to, back and forth. Now, if we're doing it and we're keeping the tail tucked under in order to keep the stretch here of the hip. If you let the back collapse like this, and there's a huge arch back here, it'll just feel like there's a lot of compression in your lower back, and you won't feel the effectiveness of the stretch here. So tucking the tail and shifting forward and back. At the end of a practice or a game where you're doing this as part of a recovery routine, static stretching, holding the position for a longer period of time is an effective way to go. But be careful to count how many breaths and not how many seconds you're in that position. So if you're able to hold that position, say we shift forward and we're here for 5 breaths. A couple of things there. Breathing's fairly important. I suggest that you continue to do it. If you're breathing through a stretch, you're controlling the intensity so that you're at a level that your brain will actually let the muscles relax and the stretch can be effective. If we make it too intense, we get into this fight or flight, tense, stressful kind of situation, and the muscles will clamp down and we won't get the benefit of the stretch that we're looking for. So that's our ankle and hip mobility stretch. Of course, we do it on both sides. Whenever there's a harder side, we just spend more time doing that exercise on the harder side so that we can even things out. We're going to also work a little bit on some lower back stability here. So we're going to do something that you guys did when you were babies. You're crawling around on the floor, and we're going to do that now. So this should not be difficult. Well, it's simple, but it is pretty challenging for most of us. So you're in this position on your hands and knees. I want your back to be pretty flat. Try not to let it sag or arch too much. Back's going to stay flat. Tuck your toes under, kneecaps up off the ground, and then you're just going to shift forward and backward with tiny little steps. So you can see my left hand and my right foot will move forward together, maybe 4 to 6 inches, and then same thing on the other side, and then we go backward. I find it helpful to have some small objects on your lower back, put your keys, your phone up there. That way you will know if your hips are shifting side to side, and that can give you some good feedback. We don't want shifting here. We want good stability, good control. I want you in charge of that motion. The other thing we're going to focus on for our trunk stability is planks. And we're going to shift between side and front planks here. And I want you to just notice that the goal here is the journey between side plank and front plank is as important as the hold itself. So we're going to start at a front plank with the legs pretty wide, spine pretty straight. What I'm going to try to do is shift super slow motion, shoulders, hips, and spine all together into my side plank. I hold it here for a few breaths. Then I'm going to try to go slow, controlled, so that my hips and my shoulders come together. And then I come back to this plank. And of course, I go to the other side. The goal is not necessarily to hold plank for long periods of time. It's to be able to control movement side to side so that you can create power later. The last thing we're going to do is we have 2 other exercises that have to do with the upper body. We're going to lie on our sides to do an exercise that has to do with upper back, shoulder blade, rib cage mobility. So if you're lying on your side, there's a few different arm positions that we'll try here. So lying on your side with the knees hugged up into the chest, the bottom hand can hold that top knee. My top hand is just going to go on my lower back, right near my back pocket. And I'm just going to rotate my chest toward the ceiling and close down. This is a dynamic stretch to start with. And I like to teach it to go with the pace of the breath. So say you take a deep breath in and you open, and then you exhale and you close. Back and forth. Then you can take your hand also behind your head and open up this way. This just affects the chest and shoulder muscles differently. I'm kind of feeling like my shoulder blade's pulling down toward the ground. Not terribly concerned with where my hand ends up. I'm more concerned with getting my rib cage and my upper back to rotate. The last thing we'll do with this arm is reach forward and sweep the floor. I'm going to go around as far as I can, rotate my rib cage back and open, all the way down until it's next to my lower back, and then back around. Do it in a space where you have plenty of room to sweep the floor all the way around. And of course, if there's one side that feels like it's harder than the other, spend more time on the harder side, yeah? The last thing we're going to do is some exercises for stability and endurance in the shoulder blade muscles. The muscles of the rotator cuff need to work for low force production. Like, it doesn't have to be super powerful, lift a ton of weight. It needs to work for us all the time to stabilize the arm. So we're going to work on some letters on our stomachs. I'm going to lie on my belly. My chest is on the floor. My nose is just hovering like an inch off the ground so that my spine is really straight. From there, I'm going to move my shoulder blades and my arms into these different patterns. There's 6 different letters, and we're going to do them for 10 seconds apiece. So we're on our bellies, maybe even the belly drawn in a little bit. Nose on the ground, chest on the ground, shoulder blades peeled back, palms toward the floor for an I. My pinkies are pretty close to my hips here. After 10, I'm going to go out here to an A, 45 degrees out, still pulling my shoulder blades back. Then I'm going to come out to 90 degrees for a capital T. Then I'm going to go thumbs up T, and then up to a Y, and then down to a W. With the W, I'm trying to go 90 degrees at my elbow, so I'm not close in. Stay nice and wide out, shoulder blades pulling back. 10 seconds apiece. So that's a minute of work. Now, if you were to run through this whole routine maybe twice, that's a great way to warm up for any workout that you're going to do. And it gives you a series of things to address the pitfalls that most of us have as competitive athletes. So study hard, train smart, play hard, have a great summer.